Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 142. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Wishing you guys a happy Friday, and thanks for being back with us. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday, Alex. I believe you're going to the Buccos game tonight, if I'm not mistaken. I think they play the Giants, I think, are in town. Is the young kid going to make it up for this game?
I was hoping so. It's kind of the reason why I bought tickets the other day, but I don't know if O'Neal Cruz is going to get the call. Reportedly, sometime this homestand, but that might not be till Monday. Why they would wait and not do it for a weekend slate? Only the Pirates can make such decisions, so we'll keep our fingers crossed.
What's your record?
I am 0-2 on the year.
Oh, you're an 0-2 on the year.
And I think I'm I know I went to one where I went to the game last year where they blew a 6-run lead to the Mets. That was sometime in July. So, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the curse, though, because the Pirates themselves are the curse of themselves.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully they can get a W. What'd you think about the NBA Finals?
Yeah, I mean, it's Steph, it's Clay. What a redemption story for Klay Thompson, and now Draymond Green's going to tell everybody about it. So, but I didn't really have a big rooting interest, I suppose. But you know, I always kind of like watching dynasties in sports that I don't have a lot of interest in, just because the historical nature of it all.
I really like Steph as obviously as a player, and I think he's just a good guy off the court as well too. So, and I kind of grew up, in the heyday of the Lakers and all like that. So, kind of a front running Lakers fan growing up, and really enjoyed. I don't like Boston. Period. Never have. So I was rooting against the Celtics in this. Probably less rooting for the Golden State Warriors, but more rooting against the Celtics, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Well, you got your wish for sure, as the Warriors capture their fourth title under the Curry-Kerr regime. Joel, Dave, I spilled the beans here. I know you're extra happy on this Friday, because a little bit later in the show, we'll have a discussion with Joel Corry, which we recorded just a short time ago, former NFL agent, to talk about the Minkah deal, potential Diontae Johnson deal, just overall lay of the land. So I know you were a pig in slop there, Dave, just really enjoying that conversation.
Yeah, you just don't know how excited I get.
I think I do.
to talk to him. And we'll talk a little bit more maybe about what he said as we kind of come out of the outro of that and all there, but really informational stuff. I think he gave us something like 45 minutes of his time. As you stated, we talk about the Minkah deal. We talk about Diontae Johnson. We talk about in and outs of contract negotiating, and he even hits on some other players around the league as well too. So at Corey Joel on Twitter, if you're listening, man, pop on Twitter and let him know you heard him on the Terrible Podcast, so he knows his time is well spent. But we certainly do appreciate his time.
And I'll apologize in advance during that interview, and actually also for my terrible take today. I have a weird audio gremlin that makes me sound, as Dave said, like I'm in the cave. And so things should sound fine right now, just weird audio stuff that popped up. So I let Joel do the talking, though, so it shouldn't be too much of a concern. But Dave, we'll jump right into it here with Minkah Fitzpatrick, again, signing that record-breaking 4-year extension to make him the highest paid safety in football. Minkah holding a press conference yesterday with the media to talk about the new deal. Obviously, nothing he said was particularly earth-shattering, or you had to lead off today with it, but given it's the middle of June and that is the biggest Steelers story, good to hear from Minkah. And it was just nice to see that he was in Pittsburgh for that event in that moment, and to be around teammates and just celebrate, what a record-breaking deal and all the work he's put in to get to this point.
Yeah, look, that press conference, I don't think could have gone any better for him yesterday, to talk about the deal, to talk about understanding the standard, and kind of said that this thing kind of came together, I guess, fairly quickly overall, and that it was just a deal that the Steelers seemed like they wanted to get done now. And as we've talked, the biggest news related to this whole thing isn't the structure, isn't the new money average, isn't any of that. It's the fact that this thing got done on June the 15th and not August 30th. Was really, really surprised that, even if to me, getting a deal done early with Minkah Fitzpatrick would have been like the first day of training camp. That's what I would have considered early. So the fact that they got it done this early, going to be interesting to see if it's a shift in kind of, philosophy here with the organization with Omar Khan, because look, this team wasn't hurting for cap space. It's, not like the only real thing is now, you don't get into a situation where you get into training camp and Minkah is having a hold in and not on the field practicing fully. Much was like the case last summer with TJ Watt. So is this precedent? We don't know. We're just this is just one of those things that that we're going to have to see start playing out over time to see if we have any kind of a new trend develop or any trend at all, if it's sort of random when they kind of get these deals done and all like that. So, but he is signed, sealed, and delivered. We got some full contract details now, Alex, that we can go over related to this as well, too. And obviously, we'll talk more about it with Joel Corry later on in the show here. But not surprised one bit at the way that this thing is actually structured here. He got a $17.5 million signing bonus as part of this deal, a base salary in 2022 of $4 million. That's a little bit different than what I thought. I was looking at it maybe going, excuse me, the other way there, with, let's say, a $21.5 million signing bonus with maybe like a $2 million base salary in there. So really, overall, the first year money is about what I thought it would be. And when you look at prorated signing bonus or signing bonus as a total and base salary as a total, you get $21.5 million. That he's going to take. We've got to ask Joel Corry too is how that gum signing bonus is paid out. I knew we forgot something in there, and I'm giving away the interview right now, something that we missed, but it just hit me. That was one of the questions I did not write down that I wanted to ask him, is about how the various ways of how the signing bonus is paid out during a year and all like that. Shame on me, but anyway. $21.5 million in 2022 total. I thought it would be more along the lines of, I think, 23.5 million in the first year. So really a little bit less there. Second year, $14.5 million base salary. His cap charge in 2022 will be $8.124235 million, and that's a decrease of $2,487,765 from what it was originally scheduled to be. Now, we'll have Joel talk a little bit about this roster bonus of $624,235 that's in there, and why that's in there, and what it's related to the 17th game and all like that. And I really didn't account for that in my projection either, and that's why the cap charge is really, about, let's say, 624,000 more than kind of what I thought it would be there. But they still cleared almost $2.5 million in salary cap space as part of them getting this deal done. The actual new money for Minkah, his new money average, if you will, is $18.247 million, and that obviously tops the $17.5 million that Jamal Adams was the previously highest paid safety in the league there. So pretty cut and dry overall, and I think overall pretty damn close to what I laid out there as a projection.
Right. I think the expectation was that Minkah was going to be the highest paid safety in football. And so that really provided a fairly easy framework to begin to work around. Just from a Steelers cap standpoint, overall, you did an updated post yesterday on Steelers Depot. Encourage people to check that out. Dave, where are the Steelers at today? How can you update them on their present cap situation?
Yeah, look, after the deal gets done there, they are 22, a little bit more than 22.8 million under the cap now with that extra space there. So quite a lot of salary cap space. Now there was the Minkah deal has not hit the CBA NFL or the NFLPA site yet, and there was actually a deduction that I'm going to have to track down a 1.012, a little bit more than 1.012 million that the Steelers went the other way on there. So I'm going to have to figure out what that was all about there, why there was a debit against them. And then obviously in a couple more days when the Minkah deal hits, they'll gain cap space back there. But prior to this new debit taking place, 22.8, a little bit more than 22 or nearly 22.9 under the cap.
Okay. But as you like to say, how much usable cap space is there?
I like to think, based on my projections, I think are fairly close here. I'd like to think that they have almost $5.9 million in usable salary cap space as they sit here right now. Now, obviously, the team has another more than 20 million that they could go get via restructures on TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward, but not touching that. If you just look at it in a vacuum as is, I think they have nearly $5.9 million in what we would call effective usable salary cap space. Once you account for things like Kenny Pickett's deal, once you account for 52nd and 53rd player on the roster, a full practice squad, and I have them needing $10 million in salary cap space to open the season with, to account for injury replacement and standard practice squad elevation fund. I've got 8.5 as a slush fund for injuries and another 1.5 for elevations. And I keep seeing people say, well, all they need is a $5 million cushion for that kind of slush fund there. Welcome to 2022, folks. I wonder where you have been for the last 10 years. Look, this team for the last several years has come a lot closer to keeping 10 million in available salary cap space at the start of the season than they have 5 million. So will my 10 million amount be exactly right? We'll see. But I'm going to tell you that I'm fairly confident that the number will probably be at least 9 million, because that seems to be about the number that they've gone into seasons with an available salary cap space the last couple of seasons there. So all my projections, as stated, I had them with effectively $5.9 million in salary cap space to spend, barring any restructures, now that the Minkah Fitzpatrick deal is done. Now, what might they spend that on?
Yeah, is that going to be
if they spend it?
Either signing, I mean, obviously there's a 90th man they have to add still. That's still outstanding. We don't expect that to cost a lot, but we do kind of wonder what are there. Diontae Johnson, an extension. Now, you said a Chris Boswell extension could probably slightly lower the cap hit,
right,
or keep it about level, you said, correct?
Right. His cap hit, a new deal for Boswell, I'm almost guaranteed would not increase his cap charge. It's probably going to lower it, I don't know, by $1 million, $1.5 million, something like that. At worst case scenario, they might do maybe a shorter deal that might result in, if they just did like a 2-year extension with him instead of a 4-year extension, then maybe you get in a situation where his cap charge doesn't even move or something because of the structure there. But even if let's say I'm totally missing the mark here and his cap charge goes up, it's not going to go up much at all, just because it would have to be a very short extension with a lot of upfront money. And I'm fairly confident that the net result of a Boswell contract extension would be his cap charge actually decreasing a little bit.
And then that leads to the biggest question of them all. What happens with Diontae Johnson? We do talk about that with Joel. You get his thoughts and insight on that, potential deal happening, but that all attention now with Minkah done, because Boswell feels like a given to me, and it's obviously smaller money. All attention shifts to will they, won't they with Diontae Johnson.
And that's what it's all about. That's what all the speculation is going to be about right now. And as I mentioned on my terrible take yesterday, and you look at the way the pieces of the puzzle coming together right now, and you look at the effective cap space that this team has, really in let's say 5.9. Let's go ahead and call it 6 million, because maybe some roster shuffling late produces a little bit of cap space, because maybe a guy with a $1 million salary doesn't make it and gets replaced by a rookie salary, that kind of thing there. So let's go ahead and start saying that number is at least 6 million right now. Here we are in June. While we do expect this team to go out and maybe sign, maybe another player or two here, what are the cap charges going to be on those players? You could potentially add 2 players here with cap charges of, in 2022, let's say about 2.5 to 3 million a piece, and boom, there you go. You've spent that effective cap space, if you will. Or, a new deal for Diontae Johnson obviously would increase his current cap charge, which is currently a little more than $3 million there. If his deal was to be more in total value and more guaranteed money than, let's say, Minkah Fitzpatrick just got, then you're looking at a very similar cap charge that Minkah has in his first year, which would be probably between $8 and $9 million. And his cap charge right now is a little more than 3. You do the math there, and that almost equates to the exact amount of effective cap space that this team has right now. So, as I stated, my gut all along has been that I don't think they get Diontae done, but my gut versus the plausibility and what might happen. It could happen, Alex. It's all about what he wants as far as new money average, and it's all about what he wants as far as guarantee money goes. And as we talked with Joel Corry about, if I'm his agent, I don't care about the whole all pro and Pro Bowl and all like that. You just gave guaranteed money at least the first 2 years guaranteed to these 2 previous guys. Where's my 40 million at? Fully guaranteed. And if I'm his agent, I'm going after that. And if I can't get that, and if I can't at least get $20 million a year, then I'm telling the Steelers I'll play out this deal, and then I'm going to go test. I'm going to make you either franchise tag me, or I'm going to test free agency.
Yeah, I want to maybe we can talk about that more after we get to Joel's commentary on that, because I think that is really interesting, and that may be the biggest hurdle of all is the guarantee structure. But Joel has some definitely interesting thoughts there on Diontae Johnson. But overall, this team's in a pretty good place. Minkah's done, Watt done last year, Boswell get done. Cap space overall not a big obstacle. And just as a quick sidebar, and I'm sure you were burned up by this just as much as I was. You see the tweet from Warren Sharp the other day about Pittsburgh spends the most on defense, the least on offense. Colin Cowherd picks that up and parrots that point in a way to criticize the Fitzpatrick extension. Such a narrow view of how Pittsburgh is building their team. Yes, they're spending the least amount of money on offense because it's such a young group, because 5 of their last 6 day 1 or day 2 picks have been offensive players. Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, Kendrick Green, Kenny Pickett, and George Pickens. And so most of these guys are on rookie deals. And so just in the way that TJ Watt was on a rookie deal and Minkah Fitzpatrick was on a rookie deal, eventually those guys get paid. So in 2 or 3 years, those early round picks offensively, hopefully will, be getting paid, and that number will change. And so, the draft capital investment offensively has been really high in Pittsburgh, and people are overlooking that.
Yeah, and CBS, NFL, and CBS tweeted out kind of that they all get each other's ideas, and they try to make a narrative come out of it in that. And we talk a little bit about to Joel about this as well too. Why in the world would you use a player's cap charge? And we talked about the same thing with Derek Watt. People saying, well, he's a highest paid player on offense there, and that's because people looking at his cap charge. Cap charge is not a way to evaluate a player's worth in any given year. By look and let's just look at offense overall, and all of these people parroting each other. That's what they're doing. They're taking the total amount of cap dollars that the Steelers have allocated in a single year to the offense, and then ranking that obviously league wide there. And as you mentioned, this team's got a lot of young players on the offensive side of the ball. We'll see what happens with Diontae Johnson. Look, they even, to say that the Steelers have not spent money on their offensive line is absolutely ludicrous. They just went out and signed two free agents, and then they re-signed Chukwuma Okorafor. Now, shame on the Steelers for structuring their contracts in a way that their first year cap hits are extremely low, and because of that they get dinged in these rankings because of it. They went out and signed them a veteran quarterback this offseason here, right? They actually claimed a guy with over a $2 million salary off of waivers in Miles Boykin there. They couldn't give more money to Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, or Dan Moore Jr. right now, even if they wanted to inflate those cap numbers, because in the CBA, they have to play their first 3 years before they get a new deal, and all like that. So and they don't have a quarterback with a big franchise number toting around this year. It's absolutely ludicrous to rank offense, defense, position groups, what have you, merely by cap numbers, because as the main thing, the kicker here, and I pointed this out on my article on the NFL on CBS tweet, and I did this on Twitter yesterday as well too. If you're looking at the way they're trying to frame this, especially with, let's see, the offensive line, and surrounding it totally by cap dollars, well, the Detroit Lions on paper, using that methodology, are the second most highest spending team when it comes to their offensive line. The Steelers are last on that list, and that's merely by cap numbers. Now, what happens if the Lions restructure the contract of tackle Taylor Decker, who right now counts $18.5 million against the cap for them this season? Let's say they do a full restructure of his contract to clear up salary cap space before week 1. And mind you, that's, if you look at their cap situation, that's plausible. They would drop, just on a restructure alone of a contract, using the methodology that NFL CBS Sports is using, they would drop from 2nd overall on the list to 12th overall. Because of the silliness of measuring it by a cap number. So you're telling me one team will drop from 2nd to 12th because of a restructure of a contract? That lets you know how stupid it is to measure players or position groups or entire sides of the football by a salary cap number, because all it takes is a restructure or one player getting a new deal, it totally shifts the the structure here.
Right. It's a really important illustration of the conversation we had the other day about why the salary cap is not a myth. You can massage it and manipulate it a lot more than people think. And that's a great example of how doing one simple restructure, which does not change the actual money the player is going to get, can change the overall cap charge and make people think that that you're spending a lot less money, even though you're spending the exact same amount of money, just spread out over time.
Right, because signing bonuses get if you want a truer methodology to use here, then why not use what a team actually spent on a player in a given year? When you look at what the Steelers did with Chukwuma Okorafor, James Daniels, and Mason Cole, and you look at what cash the Steelers are spending on those three players in 2022 alone, and by cash I mean total amount of signing bonus given, because that player gets that this year, and then the base salary for this year. Just on those three players alone, the Steelers will have spent $26.1 million in cash on those three players. Whereas when you add up the combined cap charges of those three players for this year, it's less than half of that at a little more than 11 million. So, I don't know why people think this is an actual good look at expenditures for a team, because once again, as I just showed, the Detroit Lions, if they will CBS will NFL on CBS update the rankings if the Lions restructure the contract of Taylor Decker?
Guess no. Yeah.
Well, it's stupid.
Yeah, I think it's just a lack of understanding of the cap and what cap charge means and the difference between cash versus cap. And I think it just comes from a place of not even malice, just ignorance overall.
And it looks good, and it produces a narrative.
It does. Yeah, it looks really good. And again, that all starts with the Warren Sharp tweet, which I assume that's true. I haven't run the numbers, obviously, but again, it misses so much of the context of this is probably the youngest offense in football, and so many guys are on rookie contracts, and the draft capital investment has been really large the last 2 years. So that stat, while it may be true, is terribly misleading.
Right. It really is. I mean, look, if you want to get on this team for not signing a higher profile, more expensive free agent, then let's say James Daniel. The Steelers should have not signed Chukwuma Okorafor. They should have went out and signed, I don't know, what was the highest paid tackle this offseason?
Teron Armstead got the bag in Miami.
Okay. That if you want to say that the Steelers, that's where the Steelers went wrong with the offensive line this offseason, by all means, have at it that way. Okay. But don't say that this team's not, addressing the offensive line. When they go out and sign two outside free agents and re-sign one of their own free agents in Chukwuma Okorafor, and then, they have 3 draft picks dedicated to the offensive line, dating back to 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not to say you have to like or agree with the moves. Okorafor, it didn't make me feel great to see him resign. I get why they did it. What other alternatives did you have? Did you want to have to rehaul the offensive line totally? And Okorafor is not a terrible player by any means, but let's just be accurate and use useful, relevant information in judging where Pittsburgh is spending their money. That's the whole point here.
Right. And, look, all that stuff, nothing that we're going to say is going to change nope. the running focus out there, because you got blowhards like Coward and Warren Sharp and NFL on CBS Sports. It's hard to tamp that down. People take it, they run with it, gets passed on message boards, and it becomes fact.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, we're just two people screaming into the void right now, but I think Steeler fans understand the point, and so we'll leave it there.
We try to educate. Mm-hmm. That's part of what we try to do in this whole with the site and the podcast as well too. Is look, we don't want to hot take people. We want to tell people, give our best projections on real info and provide the most accurate info so the actual listener can form their own opinion, educated opinion on this stuff. But it's still, man, I wasted way too much time on that post last night, Alex, and on the CBS tweet, and it's not going to do well on the site. But it's just
doing okay.
It's one of those things that I just had to get off my chest.
Yeah, that was good. That's your therapy. That was cathartic for you. I think that article you wrote did well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's doing okay. So people, as Steeler fans, will get it. It's going to fall on deaf ears to anyone who's not a Steelers fan. But I think for those who listen to us, it's important information.
All right,
Dave. Let's transition
to my blood pressure's off.
Yeah. Let's take 5. We'll come back now. Let's go to your 90 and 30 series, your training camp preview. You've kind of been going through that, really enjoying, just kind of a good primer. Heading into the summer, we did 6 names earlier this week. We'll cover the next 6 names in that series. Now, starting with Chris Boswell, Miles Boykin, Devin Bush, Bos. We just talked about. One of the most underrated kickers in football. I think the third most accurate kicker since 2019. He'll get paid, probably will become, at least temporarily, the highest paid kicker in football this summer. And for an offense, it's not going to produce a lot of points this year. It's probably going to have a lot of fits and spurts and struggles in the red zone. Having a kicker like Boswell is going to be even more important than usual.
Yeah, the outlook's, when recapping what he's done and the outlook and as part of this preview series and all like that, it's pretty cut and dry right now. You would expect the same Boswell that we saw last year to show up. You would expect him to get a contract extension later on this summer that maybe results in him being the highest paid kicker in the league. And if not, maybe the second highest paid kicker. And then you would expect that the Steelers really needing him to be to make all those kicks, because if this team's going to win games, it's going to be this defense helping keeping the score down on the other side, and the Steelers maximizing as many trips on the other side of the 50-yard line as they can, and they're going to call on Boswell, I have a feeling, quite a bit. So that's the long and short of Chris Boswell. It's probably not a shock to anybody listening to this.
It's not. And then with Miles Boykin, as you said, claimed off waivers from Baltimore, height, weight, speed guy, very similar profile to Chase Claypool, does have special teams value, and that's going to serve him well as he tries to compete at the bottom of this receiver group as at number 6 potentially, but somebody that all the talent is there. Has had some injuries, kind of got stuck in Baltimore's very run-heavy offense. He should look good this summer as a guy that profiles with being 6'3", 6'4", runs in the 4.4s. That's a guy that should look good, but can he be consistent? Can he do more than just be a vertical guy? And of course, can he continue to make a positive impact for Danny Smith?
What's the long and short of this? Reclamation project of a player with pedigree.
Oh, say that 3 times fast. Yeah.
And is this team going to keep 6 total wide receivers? And that counts a guy like Gunnar Olszewski. I think that's what the numbers need to work out for a guy like Miles Boykin to make the roster, other than obviously injury there. This is a guy that maybe along with, let's say, Anthony Miller, Steven Sims, probably in that group of players battling for what potentially could be a 6th wide receiver roster spot. Boykin can help you some on special teams. Still very young. He's got to stay healthy this summer, and it's going to be interesting to read your reports at training camp on him, because what he does from here on out is going to decide whether or not he makes the 53-man roster here. And sure would be nice to have another guy on the outside that can stretch the field the way he did at Notre Dame in college.
It would, but can you show that consistency? Can you be more than the occasional catch the deep ball guy? And I'm sure whatever this team's going to be in shells, in shorts, in helmets, the first 4 days of camp, he will look good, and he should look good. It's a little bit like Justin Hunter a couple years back, whenever Hunter looked really strong early on because he was that prototypical first off the bus kind of dude, and then just faded as the pads came on. You got deeper into camp. I'm not saying Boykin's in that camp exactly. Obviously, he's a bit younger overall, but can you make it through the finish line, run through the tape? That's going to be the question with Miles Boykin.
I like his chances, but he's got to, he's got to prove it during the summer. I'm kind of rooting for him, I'm rooting for both those guys, Anthony Miller and Miles Boykin, if we're being quite honest, because there's part of me that wonders what would have happened if Anthony Miller maybe would have gotten more snaps, than he did. Probably nothing monumental, but I just in general, I was surprised that Anthony Miller didn't get more playing time than he actually did there. And maybe he's just going to wash out, but going to be interesting to watch Boykin and Anthony Miller the rest of the summer.
Yeah, that might be that two dogs, one bone, and they're different roles a little bit overall in terms of what their value is going to be to the team, but it's hard to see both guys making it unless there is an injury in front of them. And then finally, Devin Bush, microscopes on him about it is about that. Let me start over. The microscope is on Devin Bush about as much as anybody not named a quarterback this year in Pittsburgh. And so Bush, fifth-year option decline, last year of his rookie deal. We all understand his struggles last year. We understand that hopefully he'll be in a better environment and have a better chance to succeed this year. But it's all up to him, ultimately. You can talk about Miles Jack and the defense line and Flores. Bush just needs to play better.
Man, you got the street all lined, right? Ready for the parade for him, for everything right now is in his favor, and can he do it now? Right. More than a year removed from the injury now, probably the first really normal, most comfortable off season situation here that he's probably had in quite a while, coaching, a new partner in Miles Jack beside him there. Now what do you got, kid? Plain and simple. And let me tell you, I expect him to be the week one starter for this team, but I also expect if things don't go well for him right out of shoot, I think you could see a quick hook on him as well too. It would be really nice if this guy just played like a second round player, because he damn sure has it. What wasn't that in 2021? You got to root for him. But I tell you what, he's going to have to prove it to me.
And more specifically, what he has to do: block shedding, block deconstruction, coming downhill, not being as passive in the run game, maybe being a bit quicker to reading some of his keys and being able to fire and trigger downhill in coverage. I think he actually needs to be less physical in coverage. He likes to really initiate contact early in the route, and I understand he's trying to reroute and bump guys, but because he's not when you're trying to do that against a tight end that's got 6 inches and 25 pounds on you, it's not going to really work. And so, just play tight, stay in face, but don't try to necessarily reroute the guy. Just run with him. You can run with him. You have the speed, and then make the play downfield. So I think he actually needs to be more physical in the run game and less physical in the pass game.
And he's probably not going to be the one out there in sub package situations, right?
I mean, he'll be there in nickel, but in dime is what I'm assuming you're referring to.
Right.
I would expect Miles Jack to be that guy. The other question is, you would assume Miles Jack will wear the green dot, I guess. I know Jack has said he doesn't necessarily love that, but somebody's got to wear it, and typically it's going to be your every down linebacker, and right now I think that guy's going to be Miles Jack.
All right, definitely a to be determined when it comes to him. And once again, I don't think they would be hesitate to get the hook on him if you get 3 or 4 games into the season. He just did not take that step.
And I'm sure Merrill Hodge would want to do that today if it was up to him. With your other 3 players in their 90 and 30, Chase Claypool, another big season for him. Don't want to put him in the exact same situation as Devin Bush, but a guy that underwhelmed last year after going into a year with big and high expectations. And so looking for consistency from him. Will you see him in the slot more? Certainly one thing you've talked about quite a bit over the last 12 months, Dave, and something I'll be watching for very closely come training camp.
Yeah, look, we want to see him stay on his feet more at the top end of routes, make more contested catches, and potentially maybe get used more in the slot where he have an opportunity to catch short, run long. This, I think he's still going to struggle. I think he is who he is at this point, and I think my assessment of him right out of shoot was correct with him, not being the ideal guy to get on top of defenders consistently on a week-to-week basis there. I think he is a guy that you can move around, obviously a guy that you can still use outside. He has talked a lot about learning all of the wide receiver positions, this summer and all like that. You just like to see a higher catch rate with him, and more explosive plays, obviously, a little bit more in every really kind of statistical category. He didn't draw the pass interference penalties that he had drawn the year before. So you hope maybe to get that number back. Obviously didn't score the amount of touchdowns that he did as a rookie there. You would expect more touchdown output out of him this year on top of it here. So it's not like his first 2 seasons in the NFL have been awful. It's just, I don't think he took the jump that many of us maybe thought he would make last season. And now it's time for him to make it, man. You probably need to see, I'm thinking at least 70 catches out of him, Alex?
Yeah, I don't know if I've thought about a number or what number would be best to put to him. He's not going to have the volume of a Diontae Johnson, and this team might run the ball more this year, or at least, not be as so willing to throw the way that they could and would with Ben, and hopefully not playing catch up quite as often either. It'll probably be in that 60 to 70 range, but I just care more about what you do with those catches than the actual number itself.
All right, moving past Claypool, we can kind of lump these next two together in Mason Cole and James Daniels. 2 offseason additions on the offensive line there. James Daniels, man, you had him pegged early in the offseason. Kudos on him being a fit and being in the Steelers kind of price range, what they look for there. Expectations are higher, I think, with James Daniels than they are with Cole, who is probably going to be your week 1 center right now. But I mean, what's the ceiling with James Daniels, Alex, in 2022?
I mean, I think in terms of his ceiling in Pittsburgh relative to the rest of the offensive line, he can and really should be this team's best offensive lineman. And we would expect Daniels to be the starting right guard, Cole the starting center. Nothing set in stone, but that's the way it seemed to go this spring and probably the way it'll start this summer. But I mean, someone that can do everything. He can pull, he can get to the second level, he can reach block, he can hopefully be an asset in the screen game. Maybe we'll see a bit more of that this year. Somebody that should play like this team's best offensive lineman and potentially have a pretty early and quick leadership role because it is such a young room overall. Yes, Daniels, I think, just turned 25 or right around there, but he's played a lot of football. This will be his 5th year. He's got more experience than most of these other guys and is a bit more vocal than a guy like Chukwuma Okorafor. So his presence in that locker room is going to be really important as well.
Absolutely. Is there potential for an all-pro year here?
Well, that's always tough to crack when you're an offensive lineman because the guys who have made in the past kind of continue to make it. I mean, I'm really high on Daniels, but I think he can play at a Pro Bowl type of level. Will he actually get the call and those accolades? Again, that's kind of tough to do, but I think he has the ability to play at a really high level.
Can he pick up where David DeCastro in his prime left off at?
Yeah, it's a lofty goal, but I think he has the potential to be something very similar to that. Certainly an upgrade over, Trey Turner last year, who was very inconsistent, very up and down, and struggled a lot in pass pro in particular. So, I mean, Daniels is that, I think, well-rounded type of dude that's going to fit well with Pat Meyer's aggressive pass set system. And so I just really focusing on Daniels himself, not trying to make too many comparisons or what he could be in terms of the accolades. I think he should be the best offensive lineman on this team, by far.
And when Mason Cole, I mean, you just need to see noticeable improvement in play over what the team got in Kendrick Green. I mean, you don't need this guy to be, all Pro Bowl, but you do need a lot better play at center than this team got out of Kendrick Green last year.
Yeah, the word with Cole is stability, consistency. I'm not expecting anything. He's not going to be a top 5 center, in football, but can you just avoid the lows that Kendrick Green went through last year, where you struggled against power rushes, where you struggled, snapping the football, kind of an important thing for a center. So just not having some of those communication issues and breakdowns and things like that, pre-snap identification of Mike linebackers and shifts and blitzes and things like that, being able to communicate, being that hub, something that Green, understandably, in his whole offensive line struggled with last year. Cole staying on his feet, executing back blocks better on, gap runs and trap plays and things like that. Just finding that consistency overall, I think is going to be really key for that center position. Doesn't need to be great, just needs to be stable.
Absolutely. That's a good call there. All right. That's the 6 for this episode of the training camp preview series. You can read the articles on those 6 players: Boswell, Boykin, Bush, Claypool, Cole, and Daniels on SteelersDepot.com. Just find the 90 and 30 series, and you'll find links to all those.
And you'll have another one, every day? I think you're doing one just about.
I'm trying to knock out 3 players every day. Thus the 90 players in 30 days. Obviously, they don't have 90. If I get to the end of this thing and I need a 90th player, Mike Tomlin will become that 90th player.
All right, good. A couple more things I want to talk about before we get to our conversation with Joel Corry. You mentioned, we talked about special teams with Miles Boykin, a little bit on Anthony Miller, Danny Smith talking with the media during mini camp, and just said, the return positions are wide open in terms of who this team's, starting kick and punt returner may be. Obviously, Ray McLeod held those duties last year. He went to San Francisco. Pittsburgh does sign Gunnar Olszewski. You would assume and presume that was part of the intent of signing him. He's done both and done both well, kicks and punts, but Danny Smith trying to keep this thing pretty open in the spring.
Are you buying what the Smith is cooking?
I'm not. As much as I love Danny Smith, I get the allure of competition and, what happens if there's an injury and you want to take a look at all your options, but you signed Olszewski for a reason. He's been proven. He's done well there. I'm not sure if there's any other great alternative staring you in the face right now. I know Kevin Austin has done some of that. Probably, I think he did more punts than kicks. But my thought is it's going to be Olszewski's job to lose.
Bless me. Look, Olszewski has like 9 career receptions or something like that. You didn't bring this guy in to impact the wide receiver core. This is a Arnaz. This is a return man that just happens to play wide receiver. That and in other words, it's going to be a huge upset. If they get this guy just like a 1-year deal for the minimum or something like that, maybe I could take Danny Smith saying that this thing's wide open at more face value. But look, I understand they only gave Gunnar $1.235 million signing bonus, so it's not like people are going to be jumping out of windows if you had to cut him. Right out of the chute this year. But I think it was pretty clear the moment that they signed this guy that they wanted someone in there that they could go ahead and stamp as being their return man. And I understand what Danny Smith is doing. Oh, it's wide open because he wants the other guys to compete. And you never know what's going to happen with injury and what have you there. But it's going to be a huge upset if we get into week 1 and Gunnar Olszewski's not returning kickoffs and punts, right?
Agreed. But, Olszewski still has to really earn the trust of the coaching staff. They signed him. They like him, but you got to do it in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. You got to take care of the football. That's first and foremost. Ball security, especially on punts, is going to be the biggest thing. And can you trust them? And so, you still have to show that in game, in practice, before you really cement yourself in that job.
Where it's wide open is it's wide open of who's the next guy behind Gunnar Olszewski. That's where it's wide open.
Sure. In terms of the, punt game, Calvin Austin's going to get some reps there. Cam Sutton will get his usual summer reps and then never get a look in the regular season, right, which is fine. McFarland's done a little bit of kicks. He could be a potential backup there. But again, the idea is going to be that Olszewski's the number 1 guy in both kicks and punts.
All right. I just thought it was humorous that Danny Smith forever wants us to believe that things are wide open.
Danny Smith forever. I'm glad you're using it. Appreciate that.
Right.
Last thing I want to talk about, I'm doing a study here, and I did this a little bit last year, but wanted to take an extra step this year in terms of Pittsburgh Steelers returning edge rushers and how they win on the money downs, third and fourth down. Did a look on Derek Tuska, and that was a pretty small sample size, and obviously Tuska not counted on being one of the main core guys this year. So I'm doing studies on Alex Highsmith, which is posted, and TJ Watt, which is completed, but will be posted Saturday on Steelers Depot. So with Alex Highsmith, again, looking at breaking down all the different moves he used on third and fourth down last year and how successful he was or was not with them. His favorite moves was the bull rush and then followed by an inside spin. Then there was some stunt contain work overall. But overall, Dave, I was encouraged by Highsmith's numbers here. I did the study on him last year, rushing on third and fourth down, and you're seeing a big improvement from year one into year two with Alex Highsmith. And so his rush win rate this year was 24%. Last year, it was around just under 16%. His bull rush in particular, last year, it was only a 7% success rate. This year, it was almost 25% success rate. And so you're seeing him be a lot more effective overall, being more effective on the bull, showing more power. And those are definitely great steps in the right direction.
And what was the one main thing we said going into the 2021 season that we wanted to see Alex Highsmith get better at?
Yeah, the bull rush power getting stronger. Right. And you saw that. Now, I think there's still a bit of work to do in terms of identifying his favorite moves. And they do seem to be the bull and the inside spin. But I know he talked in some radio interview recently about finding the go-to move and honing his craft. And that's really important. But he said the same thing a year ago, almost to the word. And so I think he's really got to maybe find those moves he likes the best. But I think if you look at the numbers, he actually has kind of found that, the bull, the spin, and then rip to the outsider, kind of his favorite moves.
Man, if he takes that next step in 2022, what does that next step look like?
I think it's flirting with double digit sacks, and that might be a lofty goal considering, it's only so many sacks to go around and you're rushing with TJ Watt, who's going to get his, and Cam Hayward, etc. But that's a guy that should be more consistent. He came on really strong the end of 2021. It was pretty quiet the first 8 to 10 weeks. He was dealing with a bit of that groin injury early on, but he really came on strong late. So this guy really could have, 7, 8, and heck, maybe even 10 sacks.
Man, if he got 10 sacks, that's like, to me, that's like TJ Watt getting 20. And yeah. TJ Watt might get 20 if Alex Highsmith gets 10. You know what I'm saying? They rush and coverage go hand in hand. And boy, if this front stays healthy, Alex, and plays like we think that they can play, especially getting after the passer aspect of it, there's a lot of guys that could rack up. I mean, we could be looking at another 58 sack, 60 sack season, right?
Yeah, I mean, 60's always been the goal. I thought one of these years they were going to get there because they've always been so close and have led or tied the league lead in sacks, I think, 5 years running. But yeah, I think they could, they should at least be above 50 again. And the 17th game certainly helps in that regard. So for Highsmith to have 6 sacks last year, despite really only coming on strong late in the season, I mean, if he can just keep that pace up, hit the ground running week 1 of this year, 10 sacks is not impossible.
Right. Look, if he does take that next step, okay, and look, the numbers are going to be the numbers. I don't think sometimes you can penalize a guy just by sack numbers alone. How is his pressure rate? Constantly hit. Sacks. Sacks will come if a team's doing it right. And a player's doing what he's supposed to do. But let's say at the end of this season, we are saying, boy, it sure was good that Alex Highsmith took that next step. Is this a guy that gets a contract extension next offseason?
He could. It'd be interesting to wonder what that value is. I haven't thought about what that number looks like. It's not going to be TJ Watt money, of course. What tier below will that be? I really couldn't tell you.
Okay.
But, I mean, obviously, if he plays well, the odds of that happening will go up, and it's a possibility.
Okay.
I did do the study on TJ Watt. I'm not going to mention every single stat because I want you guys to read it tomorrow on Steelers Depot. But I'll just tell you the overall big number. What do you think his overall rush win percentage was on 3rd and 4th down? And again, for context, Highsmith came at 24%. I'll tell you the number is higher than 24%, as you might imagine, for TJ Watt. But if you had to guess, what is that number for TJ Watt, Dave?
Rephrase, say that again.
What do you think TJ Watt's rush win rate was as a percentage on 3rd and 4th down last year? And Highsmith again at 24%. So what percent of times did Watt win as a pass rusher? If you had to guess.
47%?
Close. 42%.
Wow.
Which is insane. And if you take away kind of the contain stuff and stunt, if you just focus on really the one-on-one rushes where you can kind of do whatever he wants, that number jumps up to 49%. So he's winning almost half the time whenever he's, faced, one-on-one or not, being used as a contain guy or a stunt, running a game or something like that. That's just an absurdly good number. His rip move alone, when he uses that, he wins 69.4% of the time. I mean, that is just absurd success.
Boy, I'd like to see him just, not have to fight that groin injury, imagine what he would have done last year had his groin been better,
Yeah. I mean, he tied the NFL sack record playing in 15 games, missing halves of some of those games and battling bruised ribs and the groin and the hip and all of that stuff, and still tied an NFL record. It's ridiculous.
Reigning defensive player of the year with reason.
And he should be a favorite going into 2022. So that's the numbers on Highsmith and Watt. Again, you can check out the full Watt article tomorrow, and just kind of really puts into even more crystallization of how good that guy is. So, Dave, I think we should take a pause here, talk with our friend Joel Corry. Again, you can follow him on Twitter. Let me make sure I pull up the right handle here, @CorryJoel. And so we'll talk with him for his thoughts on the Minkah deal, potential Diontae Johnson deal, and some other league-wide discussion.
Okay, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. It is Friday, and as promised, we have a guest today, and it's a guest that needs no introduction. He's been on the Terrible Podcast several times before. It's a real joy for me because really kind of one of my mentors when it comes to learning the salary cap and the CBA and everything associated with that. I am, of course, talking about Joel Corry, former NFL agent. He now writes for CBS Sports. You can find his work very easily at CBS Sports, or you can just Google CBS Sports Joel Corry, and it should take you right to his articles page. Additionally, Joel has one of the top premier podcasts when it comes to salary cap and everything related to that as well too. It is called Inside the Cap with Joel Corry. I never missed an episode of that. You can find it really on Apple Podcast or probably anywhere where you download podcasts at. So with that long introduction, Joel, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Joe, we thought we were going to time this just perfectly and talk today about a forthcoming deal for Minkah Fitzpatrick. That deal obviously got signed, I think, on Wednesday. He had the press conference on Thursday. The numbers have all surfaced now on that. How about a quick overview of the contract? Obviously, Minkah's now the new highest paid safety in the NFL. And just your thoughts overall on the deal and the structure of it.
Well, he was able to move past Jamal Adams, who reset the safety market last year, $17.5 million per year. It's slightly over $18.4 million per year. There's $17.5 million is a signing bonus. I think there's 36 fully guaranteed. Now, that's something which I thought was going to be key in this deal, that last year the Steelers made a huge departure with TJ Watt and did salary guarantees. Typically in Steelers deals, for the exception of Ben Roethlisberger, the only thing that you had was signing bonuses, true guaranteed money. You had these third or fifth day of the league year roster bonuses in the second year and maybe the third year for big enough deal, which are supposed to act as a substitute for guarantees, but they're not guaranteed. And even with Roethlisberger, it was only injury guarantees. Now, TJ Watt had $80 million fully guaranteed at signing. So at the time I said, well, they opened the door for doing that with Minkah Fitzpatrick. And if they were going to say that that was a unique precedent to TJ Watt, I didn't think there was ever going to get a deal done, because Minkah Fitzpatrick's been first team All NFL on multiple occasions. So I know TJ Watt was Defensive Player of the Year last year, but it's going to be hard to make that distinction and stick to it. So him getting more than just a signing bonus fully guaranteed was, I think, one of the things which helped the deal get done. Maybe it's just going to be the first team All-Pro exception, and for anybody else is going to be the way the Steelers have typically done their deals.
So it might be a little bit too early to say that the lid is officially off the Pandora's box when it comes to the guaranteed money, because of the kind of the playing history statue, first team All Pro of guys like Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick there. So is that what you're saying there? Is we're going to have to kind of wait until the next deal, the high dollar deal of a player that's maybe not an All Pro?
Yeah, that's going to be the real telling one, because it's easy to do it with those two guys because they performed at the highest level, been best player at their position. But if it's someone who isn't that, if I'm them, I'm like, hey, you guys now do guarantees. So I'm the agent or the player. I'm like, I want my structure like those guys. And if I'm the team, I'm like, well, when you've done what they've done, we'll make the exception. Otherwise, it's going to be the old way. I'm surprised the Steelers have been able to get away with it for so long. Green Bay does it as well. They make the exception for Aaron Rodgers, and Cincinnati hasn't done it for anybody. They're going to have one big deal potentially next summer where it's going to come into play. There is no way Joe Burrow is going to sign a deal with the way Cincinnati typically does their contracts. And given that Deshaun Watson has a fully guaranteed contract, and if someone else can follow up, I don't see that deal getting done unless it's substantially guaranteed, if not fully guaranteed. So that's a big departure from what Cincinnati does, but we'll see in that instance as well.
All right, and Minkah Fitzpatrick has a roster bonus in this year of $624,235. That threw me off a little bit here, because I forgot about the 17th game, and based obviously off of him receiving the 5th-year option from the Steelers over a year ago. Kind of explain how that number is derived, the different ways that it can be negotiated.
Well, if you're going to get a CBA ratified, you're going to have to account for a 17th game check for players who had signed deals prior to the CBA being ratified. So as long as you didn't touch your contract, or you just did a simple contract restructure, you were going to get the 17th game check. It wasn't going to count against the cap. It was going to be classified as a benefit under the salary cap. Now, if you do more than just a simple restructure or renegotiation where there's more than those changes, in this case, you're doing an extension, you have to, as the agent, negotiate that back into the deal, and it's going to be a cap charge. So what you'll do is you'll take whatever your base salary is going to be, and you get 1/17 of that. It can be put in a myriad of ways in deals. It could have been stuck in a signing bonus, could have been stuck in as a 17th game roster bonus, could have put in as base salary, but you're going to have to account for it someplace in the deal for Fitzpatrick or any other player who does an extension that or had a contract in existence before the new CBA was ratified in March 2020 to still get that 17th game check. So that's why if you see a weird average for some of these extensions, it's because that 17th game check is being factored in. So when you want to calculate the new money, you got to back that out. But the way the NFLPA will put it on their website is they won't back it out because they're looking at new money, and it's technically not new money because you were going to get the 17th game check. But that's something you see with practically all extensions for contracts which were in place before the new CBA was ratified.
Okay, and that's the reason why technically, when you look at Minkah's deal, that his new money amount is actually probably 18.247 million, and not that I don't know what's being thrown around 18.4. I think was initially.
Yeah. You have to back out $624,235 to get the true new money, because do that from TJ Watts as well.
All right, kind of a quick sidebar to that, because of you have would that kind of same rule kind of impact Diontae Johnson with the proven performance escalator jump in his salary? Let's say he was to sign a new deal later this offseason. Is there anything that would kind of happen with his old money because of a?
It would apply to him too, because he was under contract beforehand. So
okay.
it's gonna apply to him too.
All right, Alex, got anything to start off with Minkah?
Yeah, I think just Joel, just to kind of give us a sense of how these deals go down, these big money deals that most people know are probably going to happen, but how do they get started? Typically in your experience, who reaches out first? Is it team? Is it agent? What does an opening offer look like? Are you talking more broad numbers, or is there like a full contract offer that gets submitted and then you start the negotiation from there? Can you just kind of walk us through how these deals, and I know it varies probably, but how they typically begin and kind of navigate?
Yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Since we had a combine this year, a lot of agents will meet with teams at the combine, some just to catch up with people, others to talk about free agents that they have, or you meet with a team if you know you're going to potentially talk about a contract extension. It may have come up first in a meeting like that, what the timing might be in terms of when to talk. And depending upon the relationship with the club and the agent, if it's someone they've dealt with on numerous occasions, they kind of know how the agent, his style is, and there's a rapport, and hopefully it's a good rapport. And usually the team will make the first offer. And if you have a pre-existing relationship, you don't have to have tons of conceptual conversations. If you don't know the agent, maybe you'll have a conceptual conversation before. It may be, well, I'm thinking these may be the comps, and along those lines. If you have a rapport, then maybe just cut straight to the chase and there's an offer. Nobody gives you, the other thing is, what type of first offer is it going to be? If it's someone they've never dealt with, sometimes teams will treat the agent like he's stupid and make him prove that he actually knows what he's talking about. So it might be a really low ball offer, which in turn will probably get a overly inflated first off response or counter offer from the agent. Now, if you've dealt with the person before, then you eliminate that step, and then the first offer may be what is minimally in the area of good faith, because it's the team's job to get the guy as cheaply as possible on the in a structure which is most favorable to them. I thought this might go until close to training camp, or maybe into training camp, because the safety market has not this year responded the way I thought it would. We saw Marcus Williams get a deal which is in the same neighborhood as basically Earl Thomas money from 2019, same team, Ravens, $14 million per year. Tyrann Mathieu, 29, older guy, couldn't capitalize on Harrison Smith in his early 30s, becoming then the second highest paid safety at $16 million per year. Sat out there a long time and didn't sign until after the draft for a contract with base value of $9 million per year. Incentives, it can be 11 per year. So the safety market has not had anything really helpful, and Jesse Bates is sitting out there on the franchise tag. No real movement with that. So I thought the Steelers might look at the safety market and go, you know what, let's try not to go above Jamal Adams. But at the same time, when you give up the type of draft compensation they did to get him, then that kind of puts you in a different maybe mindset in terms of what we're willing to do. I thought if the safety market had moved, not necessarily moved, but you'd seen these guys come in at a higher level, I wouldn't have had those doubts about Fitzpatrick and topping Jamal Adams. He got what he should have. One interesting thing is I think his cash over 3 years is like 51 million, whereas Adams was at like 46, just straight cash, not the new money. So that's a pretty significant jump given where the averages on the respective deals are. But just the timing of it, basically minicamp is ending and it's done, and you don't have to worry about this as a potential issue heading into training camp or even in training camp, because last year we saw TJ Watt with his hold in, and you're not dealing with that, at least with Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now you clear that off the plate, you can turn your attention potentially to other guys if you want to.
Right, Diontae Johnson, Chris Boswell. That's the thing that surprised Dave and I the most. We talked about this in the episode, I think, Wednesday, was the timing of it. We thought this would come later in the summer. Do you maybe sense a shift under Omar Khan in this let's take care of business early? And just personally, I mean, I assume you've dealt with Khan over the years. Do you have any impressions of how he is as a negotiator?
Yeah, I dealt with him. First dealing was he was an intern for Terry O'Neill when he was in law school for the Saints, when we had a guy, Sammy Knight, who almost became a Steeler once.
Wow. How about that?
We couldn't quite get to where we wanted to money-wise before the draft the year Troy Polamalu was taken. But he almost became a Steeler, ended up going to the Dolphins instead after the draft.
I'm glad he didn't, because I'm sure it might not have happened.
But typically, if you have a GM who doesn't have the background from the cap standpoint, is more of a scouting guy, the cap guy has a whole lot more latitude than if you have more of a business guy as a GM. Kevin Colbert was more of a football guy. So I don't think there's going to be a huge change in terms of the negotiation of contracts, because contracts for Omar's the domain when he got there, and that's what he's known for. So as him as GM, I don't think that there's a big shift. If you can reach an agreement when you can reach an agreement. If you have a meeting of the minds early, it gets done early. If not, then it gets done at a later date. It all depends on the demands of the offers from the two sides.
Joel, you are such a good teacher that you've got a nerd like me able to kind of draw the rough makings of what a potential contract will look like, a big deal for these players now. And I'm very appreciative of that. But if someone like me can sit there and draw something like that out in the framework, obviously the team or both sides would kind of have the framework in their head as well too, close to. Obviously you got to fine tune the actual numbers, but what else is there that goes on in the negotiating process that we don't talk about and we don't see, like the offsets and how much of a sticking point can that stuff be that might end up carrying a deal later on into the summer or whatnot?
Well, I've always said this stuff isn't brain surgery. So, and maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, because
it's like riding a bike to you.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have the best perspective from that standpoint. But one thing is, first, length of contract. And for some teams, that can be a huge impediment to a deal. Given that we are anticipating the cap is going to start showing significant growth once we pay back all the money from the losses due to the pandemic, then you'll see 2024 and beyond huge cap growth. So you're not going to want to do 5-6 year deals. So 4 years is probably the right length. Dallas Cowboys, that's a big problem. That's why when Dak Prescott was franchised the first time, you didn't get a deal done, because they typically like to do longer deals. Now, if you are a seasoned agent, you're going to look and you're going to go, okay, what does this team do and how do they structure their contracts? You're not going to ask for something they don't do. So most teams on veteran contracts, you have offsets. The Rams, one team doesn't particularly care about them. Maybe if you have enough leverage as a quarterback, some of your guarantees, if not all, won't have any offsets. But you start asking for stuff a team doesn't do, then that's going to hinder the whole process. So that was probably the big sticking point with TJ Watt last year, that he wanted them to do something they hadn't done, and that's what took forever to get it done. He kind of greased the wheels for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Cash flow is important, particularly since NFL contracts aren't like basketball and baseball contracts. They're not fully guaranteed. Yes, we did have Deshaun Watson a fully guaranteed contract, but that's still an anomaly. So you're trying to get as much cash as early as possible in the deal. So you start looking at least I did, cash flow percentages. How much of my cash do I have after the first new year, the second new year, and the third new year? Because if a deal on a 4-year extension, if you have 25% of your cash after the first year, then that's neither front loaded or back loaded. That's a neutral deal. If you have 50%, neither front loaded or back loaded, neutral deal. 75% after 3 years, neutral deal. So you want the percentages to be above that after each respective year. So what I used to do was I would look at, okay, for deals of this magnitude, what are the cash flow percentages for the other players at the position of the guy I'm representing, and would want to try to beat those cash flow percentages. So that's just some of the things which go into it.
And when you talk about the cash flow, is it better to look at, I mean, obviously you look at what the year one take home money is over the old money and all like that, but is the more important really starting point of putting these things together is the new money cash flow through the first new year of the actual, let's say, extension?
Well, not necessarily the first new year. Obviously, if on a 4-year, I don't want it at 25. I'm trying to get it more like 37, 38, 39%. But if I have the second year fully guaranteed, then maybe I have a little more latitude to take a little less on the first year percentage. The second new year is guaranteed. So then I can have a little more flexibility to give there as a concession. But you're going to look at how much is fully guaranteed at signing versus what is conditionally guaranteed and can become guaranteed at a later date. But for me, the cash flow and how front loaded the contract was very important.
All right. Moving on from Minkah Fitzpatrick. Alex, you got anything else on Minkah?
No, that's all on Minkah.
Okay. We're going to, now that this deal's done this early in the off season, I mean, June 15th, as opposed to, let's say, August 30th, there's a lot of time to speculate now about whether or not the Steelers are going to get a deal done, an extension with Diontae Johnson. And because of the guaranteed money on that TJ Watt got, that Minkah Fitzpatrick got there, you got to think that agent's going to be going after at least the first 2 years there. Where is, based on the wide receiver market and Diontae the player and kind of the standards that the Steelers, at least in these last two big contracts, are, is the actual starting point here $20 million new money average with at least $40 million guaranteed? And where do you actually see maybe Diontae's actual value at?
In the agent's mind, it's going to start above $20 million per year. If I'm the Steelers, I don't want to touch that. We had 4 wide receivers heading into the offseason that were in the $20 million per year club. And that included Julio Jones, who was released. You now have 11. So it would be 12 of Julio, but he's not on that contract anymore. So the wide receiver market has exploded. If I'm the agent, I'm like, hey, the market is the market. On this team, he's the number one receiver. I don't think anybody is going to put him in the elite receiver or tier 1 category. If I'm the Steelers, I'm looking more at what Hunter Renfrow just did. Hunter Renfrow is a number 2 to Devontae Adams is number 1. So I'm above Renfrow, but I don't want to go to that $20 million club. I might be looking at, well, what if I had to franchise him next year? And think, well, maybe if I don't want to make that commitment, I'll franchise him for a year if I have to, or if he just blows up and has an Antonio Brown type year, then I'll be more willing to pay that type of money. But if I'm the agent, I'm looking at that $20 million per year club. I don't really want to go above Brandon Cooks if I'm the Steelers, who came in on a 2-year extension right under 20. Maybe if you're trying to keep the dollar amount lower, you go the 2-year extension like Cooks and Renfro did. And Renfro's is, I think, $15.85 million is the new money, 31.7 over 2 with Pro Bowl bonus for each of the years this year and the 2 extension years. And that way, if you did a shorter term extension, you can get back to the market sooner once the cap is really taken off.
Now, with that though, if I struggle to see Diontae even and his side accepting the deal less than $20 million a year.
We're not even getting to the guarantee.
Oh yeah,
in terms of I want the Watt Fitzpatrick treatment. So there's a lot to overcome in this deal. Because if whatever Terry McLaurin gets, I'm going to count myself to him. Because I'm going to go, hey, if you look at us statistically, we're pretty similar over our 3 years. So that would be an important deal for me because apparently that one will get done if you believe what Ron Rivera has been saying recently.
And then when let's say Terry does get done, let's say DK Metcalf also gets done. If you're looking,
I'm not putting them in the 2 category. DK Metcalf is a physical freak who also set the single season receiving yards record for the Seahawks. We don't have that here in this case.
My point being,
you're talking a small receiver versus physical marvel.
Right.
And also, I could see the Steelers being unenthusiastic about paying a smaller receiver, even though the last great receiver you had didn't have tremendous size, but the production was better than anybody else's of his peers.
Right. But Diontae's side might be saying, look, if we can't at least join that $20 million club, then Diontae would probably be the prime unrestricted free agent wide receiver prize next offseason.
Yeah, well, you can always get franchise tag. That number's going to be right around 20, which also would give the agent ammunition to go, well, if it's going to be 20 and you do it twice, then that's 22 a year if you average the 2. So I don't know if this thing gets done, if they even negotiate with them.
So you would be surprised from at least where we sit now if it did get done.
Yeah, there could be too many sticking points. 1, the explosion of the wide receiver market, and 2, the structure with the guarantees.
Would you personally, if you were to GM, and we agree, I think we agree that he's not that tier 1 guy, but he's going to want to get into that $20 million club. If it was, let's say it was 20 million new money average with 40 million guaranteed, and that's what it would take to sign him, would you sign him as a GM for that?
Probably not. Probably not right now. I'd want to wait and see. And if I think I have a good receiver group with the young guys and they step up, then he could potentially be someone I would feel more comfortable not extending. And if I had to franchise him, I know you're not supposed to do this, franchise someone with the express purpose of trading him. Technically, you're supposed to franchise someone and make a good faith effort to negotiate, but that never gets enforced. There's language like that in the CBA, but nobody enforces that. If that was the case, then the Patriots couldn't have franchised Matt Castle when Tom Brady was injured because you knew he was never going to be the Patriots quarterback, and then traded him to Kansas City with Mike Vrabel.
Well, there's no way Diontae Johnson is going to be happy earning $2.79 million in 2022, though, right? I mean, that's going to be one unhappy camper.
Yeah, well, one thing he's not going to do, he's not going to miss the first day of training camp,
right?
Because the CBA had a slight change from the previous CBA, this new one. It used to be that if you didn't report to training camp at least 30 days before the regular season opener, which would be basically August 8th, then you didn't get an accrued season, year of service for free agency. Now, in this CBA, if you don't report to training camp on time, you don't get the accrued season. He has 3. You need 4 to be unrestricted. So it doesn't matter if you show up 2 days after training camp starts and you play all 17 games. You're not getting that fourth year service for free agency. So he's showing up to training camp on time, so he can ensure that he will be unrestricted. If you show up late, you play through the year with no contract, then you are a restricted free agent after the year. You don't. I don't think you're going to see any of these guys who were drafted in the 2019 second through seventh round missed the start of training camp.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just to kind of pull back and look a little more broadly around the NFL, obviously with Deshaun Watson's fully guaranteed $230 million contract, does that now open that Pandora's box for every other quarterback? Will every other quarterback, I'm sure they'll ask for it, but will they get a fully guaranteed deal as well? What's the future of that position look like?
Well, we didn't see anyone capitalize on it when Kirk Cousins got the first lucrative veteran fully guaranteed contract in 2018. The next two quarterbacks were Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers, who surpassed him, and they didn't get it. So I never considered Derek Carr as someone who was going to do that, because he was talking about doing something which made sense for him and the Raiders. So he's out of the equation. So you really have to look at, from the most immediate standpoint, Kyler Murray, who's wanted a contract like yesterday, Lamar Jackson, and Russell Wilson. If one of those three doesn't get it, it's going to be tough. I don't think Kyler Murray gets it because the Arizona Cardinals are not a cash-rich team. When he was drafted, he had, I think, about a third of his signing bonus deferred until the following, I think, March, while Nick Bosa, the pick right after him, had his signing bonus paid in a lump sum. And the Cardinals routinely defer signing bonus money. So if they can't even afford to pay signing bonuses in the same year the deals are done, how are they going to be able to put all the money in escrow you need for a fully guaranteed contract? Now, Lamar Jackson's the interesting one. You got more deeper pockets with Bisciotti. So I'm looking at it. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I have an MVP. Where's Deshaun Watson's MVP? I have no baggage. I want a fully guaranteed contract. And if you can't do that, we can play the franchise tag game. And most people, to me, get this wrong. There are two franchise tags, the exclusive, non-exclusive. Now, for non-exclusive, you can solicit offer sheets, and the compensation on an unmatched offer sheet is 2 first-round picks. Now, Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson went for a whole lot more than 2 first-round picks. And I know that Lamar's style is somewhat unique, but you get a quarterback-needy team, which has an abundance of cap room. If they look at the draft compensation, what it took to acquire those two guys, and you can put together an offer sheet that the Ravens potentially wouldn't want to match, 2 first-round picks, that's a good value. You've had non-quarterbacks go for more than 2 first-round picks in trades like Laramie Tunsil and Jalen Ramsey. So you're thinking exclusive tag. That's going to be the average of top 5 salaries once the restricted free agent period ends. By salaries, I mean cap numbers with a slight adjustment. But the restructures get frozen the day the tag gets put on, so that would be March. Right now, that number is going to project close to 46. Whereas if you go non-exclusive, it's going to be right around the $32 million neighborhood. So if I got 46 I'm looking at, and you play the tag game twice, I can make 100 over 2. That's going to give Lamar more leverage than I think some people are giving him credit for having. But maybe if you don't want to fully guarantee 5 years, and that's basketball money. That's type of contracts you get in a max basketball contract, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, $228 million on his extension that kicked in this year over 5 years. So maybe it's 3 like Cousins, but if I'm going 3 like Cousins to get the fully guaranteed contract, I want to know franchise transition tag to go along with that with Lamar, but we'll see. He alluded to the fact that he was kind of coy that we'll see if he shows up to training camp on time. Now, if he doesn't show up to training camp on time, he doesn't have the same issue as 2019 players in their contract year. He already has 4 accrued seasons, 2018 through 2021. He doesn't need another one. Once you have 4, you don't need another one. So he would be unrestricted or get tagged next year. So we'll see where this one goes. But Russell Wilson's the other interesting one to me, just from the standpoint you have a new owner who has extremely deep pockets. Wilson's last 2 contracts, last one made him highest paid player in the league. The other one, second highest paid player, I believe, has a baseball agent in Mark Rogers. That's primarily what he's known for. Fully guaranteed contracts are the norm in baseball. So I wouldn't be surprised if he pushed for the fully guaranteed contract and got it. Patience has paid off for Lamar. But to me, you've already had the game-changing event in the fully guaranteed contract. So I would try to strike now. But if I can't get the deal structured the way I want it to, or the dollars that I want, I'm willing to be patient, because to me, it's going to be exclusive tag, not non-exclusive. He's looking at like upwards to $46 million next year to play on a tag. And do the Ravens really want to commit that type of money to a tag?
Right. My last question for you, Joel, then I'll turn things over to Dave. I'm betting this phrase burns you up the way that it burns Dave and myself up. The idea that salary cap is a myth. We've heard that so much time and time again. Could you explain, assuming you agree that that's an incorrect phrase, can you explain why the salary cap is not?
Yeah, that's incorrect. If the salary cap didn't exist, then the Rams would have re-signed Von Miller. Darius Williams would still be the second corner, and they would have 3 $15 million receivers with Robert Woods there, as opposed to trading him to Tennessee. Now, you can manipulate the salary cap, and some teams do it better than others. If you look at the Rams with Aaron Donald's deal, because they gave him a $25 million signing bonus and added 2 dummy voiding years to the contract, his cap number went up to $27 million. It was a small increase. And with Cooper Kupp and his deal, they picked up a couple of million in salary cap space. So it also helped that you got for the Rams, Matthew Stafford, to give them a break. He only wanted something fair. And to me, given what they gave up to acquire him, won the Super Bowl in the first year, if he really wanted to fully exploit his leverage, he could have said, you know what, you got to make me the highest paid guy or the second highest paid guy in the league. He made Jared Goff the second highest paid guy, and you wanted me to be an upgrade over him, and I delivered what he couldn't. So he would have been in the $47-48 million range as opposed to 40. So they got a little bit of a gift there. Now, as long as the cap goes up a pretty decent amount each year, which it will when the new TV deal money starts kicking in earnest, you can outrun taking a credit card approach to the cap, which to me is putting off today's cap obligations until tomorrow. Now, as you see, when you have an unforeseen event like the pandemic, Saints ended up releasing players which otherwise would have been on their roster had you had normal cap circumstances. Emmanuel Sanders would not have been with the Buffalo Bills. Janoris Jenkins would have been their second corner, and they wouldn't have had to trade for Bradley Roby. So the salary cap does have impact on decisions that teams have to make in terms of who stays and who goes.
CBS yesterday, NFL and CBS put out a list of position groups of offensive line, and it was ranked by total amount of cap dollars for the offensive line position group. And that drove me out of my mind why you would use cap dollars or, for in a certain year for a position group, because all it takes is one restructure or one new contract to inflate or decrease either one of those. What is the single best way to measure spending by a team, let's say on a position group, would you rather use all the players' average yearly value of their contract or new money average, or would you rather use what the actual cash was spent on the player in that given year? Say in the instance of, let's say, Chukwuma Okorafor with the Steelers, his cap number is below 5 this year, but the actual cash spent on him this year was $10.5 million when you add the signing bonus and the base salary together. What is the single best way to look at these players the way CBS tried to do that?
There isn't a single best way. You look at both. You look at the cap allocation of dollars and also the new money averages. And you're looking at how, if you're a cap guy for a team, and I was talking to someone who ran a cap for a team for a good 15 years, past few days, and he was telling me that they would look at top 10 cap charges on a team, look at how many of those are actual guys, which ones have been restructured. If that's top 10's dead money, track that stuff as well. Also look at terms of average salary per year, how many players that a team has in the top 10 of the position. So you don't look at just one metric.
Okay. And to end this up, we got actually a question from a listener via email. He says, for years, clubs have told agents that a main reason for not guaranteeing contracts was the funding rule, an archaic league rule that says teams must put into escrow an amount of money equal to what they are guaranteeing a player in any contract beyond the first year. So who actually, the question is, so who actually benefits from an escrow account, the players or the owners? That's from Michael.
Yeah, well, that's a rule that I'll just put it this way. If I had $1 for every time I heard a team tell me that, I could have bought a franchise by now. Yeah, it's something that some team owners give their negotiators carte blanche to use as an excuse anytime they don't want to do anything, but it is a very real thing. Not every owner could put the money for a fully guaranteed contract, the future guarantees in escrow. And you start doing that, have multiple fully guaranteed contracts, then that's a lot of money you put in escrow. And if I'm the owner, I don't want to tie that money up. I want to invest that money someplace where I can earn money, earn interest on the money, have the money working for me. So it's going to take quarterbacks to hold the line and force the issue for fully guaranteed contracts. It's not something that's ever negotiated into CBAs. That's not how it worked for Major League Baseball and the NBA. It was individual players exploiting their leverage until it became the norm. That's what's going to have to happen in the NFL. But these guys are multi-millionaires or billionaires for a reason, and tying up that type of money in escrow is not something they would willingly want to do. So they're going to fight that one tooth and nail, and we'll see if Deshaun Watson's the game changer they could be or not.
Joe, you're one of those guys too that really kind of has a pulse on the whole league, not only contractually but moves and just you've done this a long time. What is your overarching thoughts on the 2022 Steelers as we sit here in June, middle of June?
It's all going to come down to quarterback. One is Mitchell Trubisky going to look like people were excited about when he saw action in preseason in Buffalo, or can Kenny Pickett come in and have a smooth transition as a first-round pick? Because if you get good quarterback play, you're right there. If quarterback play is an Achilles heel, you're not making the playoffs.
Okay. What do you got coming up on the podcast?
Probably Lamar Jackson, going into more detail than I did here. That'll be the next issue. Probably episode. I'll probably record it over the weekend at some point.
All right, fantastic. Joe, look, you just don't know how much I'd keep you on another 2 hours if you let me, but I know that's not possible. Alex and I really appreciate all the work that you do on CBS Sports, on the podcast, on Twitter. You're a huge mentor to me. It's a joy to have you back on the Terrible Podcast again with Dave and Alex.
Hey, anytime, guys.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our thanks to Joel Corry, and you should follow him on Twitter at Corry. Joel, again, appreciate his time. I know he's a busy guy, and the fact that he makes time for us, really respect the heck out of that.
Yeah, look, I can't speak highly enough of the guy. He's always there to answer questions that I have in direct message and all like that. And his knowledge is just outstanding. Make sure if you're into this kind of stuff like I am with contracts and CBA and all like that, man, load up get his podcast and I think it comes out an episode like I think every week or every other week, depending on the off season or whatnot. But you will learn a lot just merely by listening to his podcast alone. They're not very long episodes. I think 30 minutes maybe kind of might be the max when it comes to that there. And also reach out to Twitter, if you will, and thank him for coming back on with Alex and myself. Now to what he said. Really, I mean, there's not really a lot to recap about the whole Minkah Fitzpatrick thing, right? I mean, it's been pretty cut and dry, not only with our own analysis heading up to the contract, but afterwards and all like that. What did you think about what he had to say about Diontae Johnson?
Really interesting. And I've been in the camp of I think a deal is going to get done, though I'm not, supremely confident in that. I've been kind of 60-40, whatever that's worth. But I think the most important point that Joel made was that guaranteed money. Will it be, guaranteed through the first 2 years like Minkah Fitzpatrick? It's not going to be 3. I think we all understand that. Right. Minkah didn't get 3. Diontae's not going to get 3, but will he get 2? And Diontae's going to argue, well, you did that for Watt. You did that for Minkah. You got to do that for me as well. Pittsburgh's going to say, as Joel said, well, you're not Minkah Fitzpatrick or TJ Watt. You're not an all-pro. We're not making you the highest paid guy at your position. We're not going to make that exception. And that might be that big sticking point, that line in the sand, and a hurdle that both sides may not be able to overcome. I think if a deal does not get done, it's going to be over that guaranteed language.
You're probably right there. And look, he's going to have – you look at just all these wide receivers that have gotten deals too, and look at the guaranteed money even on down into – man, you into like the top 15 numbers here. Even Robert Woods, way back when in his last deal, was like $31.7 million guaranteed. Mike Evans, $55 million total guaranteed. You look at the fully guaranteed amounts. Even with Robert Woods, it was 18.2 fully guaranteed. Mike Evans, his fully guaranteed amount was $38.258 million. Tyler Lockett, $24 million. Kenny Galladay, $28 million. You look at the guys this offseason alone. Godwin, $40 million fully guaranteed on an average yearly value of $20 million. Amari Cooper, $40 million guaranteed on 20 average million. Mike Williams, $40 million fully guaranteed on 20. That's why I've said that I think the starting point with Diontae Johnson would be $20 million new money average and $40 million guaranteed. If the Steelers say, look, we'll give you $22 million average yearly value, but your guarantee is going to be a signing bonus of $21 million. That's it. Does he take it?
Yeah. I mean, what do you think?
I would, how far does the selling point go of, well, we come close to fully paying out all of our, there's a leap of faith in there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that Watt and Minkah has been paid hurts that Steelers argument a bit more. It's harder to sell, I think.
I mean, yeah, you could say, well, okay, well, you did it for Minkah. And the Steelers' argument, once again, will be, well, we made these guys the highest paid players in the league, and we don't think, we're obviously not going to make you that. So that gets us out of having to, but his agent's going to go right to this list that I'm reading off of and say, look at all these wide receivers. None of them are highest paid player in the league, but they essentially got first, in most cases, first 2 years of their new money fully guaranteed there.
To which Pittsburgh will say, we don't care what those teams do. We care about what we do. So there's the dance.
And Pittsburgh will say, look, if you don't take this deal, if we get in a position, we're just franchise tag you next year. Let's say that number is $22 million and you earned 2.7 this year, that means you made $24 million over 2 years, and you could have had that same amount of money up front if you had taken our deal,
Right. And it's better to take the deal because it's a little bit more security and you get your signing bonus. You're going to get paid sooner than you would on the tag.
Right. But it's a slippery slope, right? I mean, that's why there is going to be. Are you actually? I have found myself moving from the gut feeling of I don't think it gets done to maybe this gets done. Are you going from the I think it's going to get done to I'm not so sure it gets done?
Well, I was always, questioning whether it would get done. I've been leaning, but I think Joel made a really good point that I hadn't considered enough was because I think I will disagree with Joel. I think 20 million is going to be the number. I think going below and some of the Renfrow comparisons, I think Pittsburgh's going to understand they can't play that game because the market is the market. These guys have gotten paid. Johnson's a number one, playing like a number one, treated as a number one in this offense. I don't think that's going to be the sticking point. There'll be some negotiation there, but they can resolve that. But the guaranteed portion, I don't know about that one, Dave. That might be the real hurdle.
All right. If they offered Diontae $20 million new money average and $40 million fully guaranteed, do you think he takes it?
That's the first 2 years guaranteed?
Right.
I mean, who knows? But I'll say yes.
I would think that would be a smart business decision for him to do that as well. Would you, if you're the Steelers, give him an offer like that?
Well, it's not my money, so it's easier to answer those things.
Look, I understand the argument that when you think, and we said this the other day, if you to stop, 100 NFL fans on the street and ask them to name their top wide receivers in the NFL, how many of those people would put Diontae Johnson in the top 10 of rattling off names? Probably a low percentage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you give Johnson, the 2 years fully guaranteed, that really ends any sort of illusion of this is how we do business. With Watt and Fitzpatrick, you could make the argument, well, those are all pros, the best of their position. We paid them accordingly. And so that's still kind of all a separate category. With Johnson, that would be a separate thing in a whole new world. So is that the guy? I guess the question is that the guy you want to really open up Pandora's box for, even more than it's already opened? And that's the question Pittsburgh will have to answer.
And people say, well, Steelers draft wide receivers well, yada, yada, yada. I mean, the guy is super talented. Is he Antonio Brown? No, he's not. Is he better than the Christian Kirks? Is he better than, is he comparable to at least a Chris Godwin?
Yeah, about there. And you're right. He's not AB on the field, but he's also not AB off the field. Like, he's very low key. I mean, AB was a really hard worker, but Johnson's that quiet, not flashy, really not that much of a diva in this world. I mean, a little bit of that, but every receiver is a bit of diva in him, unless you're like James Washington or Larry Fitzgerald. But like a really just put his head down and work kind of dude, and you have to respect that.
It's going to be we're going to be talking about this for a long time, I have a feeling, right? And look, I said this to Joel Corry. He's not going to be happy if he has to play for 2.7, whatever his number is in base salary in 2022. He's not going to be a happy camper.
Yeah, and that might compel Johnson to maybe not take the to buy into the leap of faith there about the way Pittsburgh typically structures their deals. Because do you want to play for way undervalue this year and hope you don't get hurt, or hope you don't have a bad year, uncertainty about the offense and the quarterback and how you're going to be used? Well, your numbers get dinged because they're going to run the ball more. They got quarterback issues. I mean, there's a risk there for Diontae. Pittsburgh has all the leverage here with the tag and everything. So does that make Diontae more likely to take a deal? I think it does. Well, does that mean a deal gets done? We'll see. But Pittsburgh, I think, really holds all the cards here. And,
Joel brought up one place I would differ from Joel with what he said was the whole Hunter Renfrow thing. Diontae Johnson's agent should be fired if he takes the Hunter Renfrow deal.
Yeah. Now, Joel did say it's above Renfrow. I think he was trying to say somewhere between Renfrow and the $20 million club, I think is what his point was trying to be.
I still think I would I would think that the agent needs to be fired. Look, Renfro's contract isn't all that. Plus, it includes 2 voidable years on top of it, so they could stretch that signing bonus out there. And I think he got what was the signing bonus that he got? I thought it was like 9. I'll have to look. 14. Let's see. Received $21.5 million in guaranteed salary, which $14.5 million is just fully guaranteed. So those numbers didn't come in as highly pumped as they first were. When we got 2 days after that, 3 days after that deal was done, and the numbers hadn't surfaced, I smelled a rat in there, and I was exactly right in doing that. Let me figure out what his signing bonus was. Real quick here. I thought it was extremely low. I think a $9.18 million signing bonus is what Hunter Renfrow received as part of that deal. Now, there are 2 voidable years in there, and the contract only runs technically through 2024. But, man, even the cash flow isn't all that great in that deal. I would suggest that Diontae's agent gets fired if he was there. Steeler fans would look, anything that comes in under $20 million new money average and anything that comes in under $40 million fully guaranteed, if that ends up being a deal that Diontae signs, I think it's a bargain.
Yeah, I would agree. But it's really hard in this offseason where all these receivers have gotten 20 million plus, Mike Williams, and what was Christian Kirk? He was a bit below that, I think. Was he at 18 something?
Christian Kirk's new money average is $18 million, and he received a little more than double than that fully guaranteed, $37 million. I don't see how any agent whatsoever doesn't look at that and say, "Are you kidding me? We got to get more than that."
Right. No, I'm with you. So I think it'll be 20 million, and I think Pittsburgh can do that and would be willing to do that. Again, it's really about that guaranteed structure.
Right. So that's going to be, and if you're on either, if you're listening to this and you're on one side or the other, it's totally understandable. That's what the big speculation is going to be about. Will they or won't they? Should they or shouldn't they with Diontae Johnson?
Yeah, and so we'll let this thing drag out. And I think if it does get done, it won't get done until late in the summer. Maybe I'm wrong. Minkah surprised us, but I think this will be a messier negotiation, and this probably will be like a late, right before week 1 kind of deal if it happens.
I could see this being an August 30th, maybe potential tight deal for him if it gets done at all.
Right, now, and because he's not going to hold it either.
Right. They're not. They're going to say, you better, if you want a deal, you better get out there.
Yeah, so it's not going to be like this thing of we got to get there's more urgency to get a deal done because he's holding in, he's not working with the team, he's going to be working with the team, working in full. So, the deal can kind of drag out a bit longer.
I'd like to think that that's the way it's going to happen.
Yeah,
if one does get done.
We'll see. We'll keep talking about it, as you like to say. I mean, This discussion will not go away with Minkah wrapped up and Boz. I think Boz could get done like the day they report to camp. That would not surprise me if that's kind of the way that the timeline on that getting
it should
done.
Be super easy to get that thing done.
Yeah, so we'll keep you posted. All right, Dave, show running a bit long. Let's get to reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, I don't have many of them here. Let's see here. From Derek Demi, Alex, I thought overall your ranking of all the Kevin Colbert draft picks was spot on. Who is your number 1 draft class based on your rankings of all picks? Could you use some sort of average system to calculate how good or not so good the draft class is based on your rankings? Would this be an accurate analysis?
I do plan on doing that. I have not done it yet. I have to figure out some sort of system. It'll probably be poorly constructed, but I'm not super smart with the math of it all to try to figure that out in terms of how to rank it. But I do plan on doing one additional wrap-up post to kind of look at Colbert's picks a bit more big picture. Best class, 2017, was really strong, obviously with Watt and Juju and Sutton and Connor. Trying to think, maybe if you can vamp for a second while I pull up some of the draft history. Some of the earlier classes obviously were pretty strong.
Yeah, and I'll set up the second question here. It's about Kenny Pickett. He says he enjoyed my breakdown contextualization of Kenny Pickett. He says, after I did the deep deeper dive on him, would you have ranked him higher than you did pre-draft? He says, I believe you had him 4th pre-draft. Actually, he was number 2 on my list. I just wasn't so sure that the Steelers should take him. Is where he ended there. He says, I know it's a bit of a moot point this offseason, but want to get your assessment of this aspect specifically. He says, I was not happy with the pick. I was with you with all thinking it would be Willis here. Look, I'm pretty much in the same path with pick. I am a little bit more impressed with his extended the play ability and all like that, more so than maybe I was early on in this process with Kenny Pickett. But it's always been 2 major things with me with Kenny Pickett. I'm concerned a little bit about that arm strength, and I'm concerned about the processing aspect of it. Does that mean that I don't think, that he can become a good quarterback? Look, I was high on Sam Darnold coming out, and as I've said several times, quarterback is the single toughest position for me that I've struggled with evaluating over the years, the single one. And obviously in the NFL, I believe that reigns superior as well too. A lot of times you're just not going to know about, you try to eliminate as much of the, X factors that you think that might not lead to success in the NFL level as you can, and kind of draft that player. But it still comes down to, what's this guy do when he gets under center the first 2.5 years in the league? And that's it. And Sam Darnold obviously hadn't really done much of anything. He's really close to washing out and becoming probably an Andy Dalton kind of backup, if you will, or, for journeyman, if you will. I'm not going to say Kenny Pickett can't become a championship quarterback or a franchise quarterback. Just the biggest things with me on Kenny Pickett have been what they've been all along: arm strength and ability to process.
And to go back to the question about some of the best draft classes, and I'm just kind of doing this on the fly, no particular order here, but 2010, Pouncey, Worlds. Jason Worlds was a better player than people think. Obviously, he retired, but he was coming in the form as he stepped away.
Yeah. Probably about where Alex Highsmith is now, right? Is what Jason Worlds left off at?
About there. That sounds right. But yeah, 2010, Pouncey, Worlds, Sanders, and then, of course, AB in the 6th round, some other picks in there that didn't work out. Let's see. 2007, Tomlin's first class, Timmons, Woodley, Spaeth, William Gay in the 5th round. It's a really strong group overall. Let's see. 05 was decent with Miller, McFadden, Trey Essex at the top of that one. Kimiatu in the 6th round. But maybe the best in terms of just like top to bottom, 2002, Kendall Simmons, Antoine Mandel, Chris Hope, Larry Foote, Ferron Haynes, Lee Mays, LeVar Glover, and Brett Kiesel. Aside from Glover, they all contributed something in Pittsburgh, and obviously got big hits in Kiesel, and L was a really good player, and Hope only played for a couple of years, but was a really good talent. Larry Foote, that was a gem. I mean, top to bottom, I think that's going to be his best class.
Okay. All right. Fair enough there. So that's a couple of questions we knocked out. We also knocked out one during the Joel Corry interview as well, too. Major kudos to Joel Corry. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you support him. Reach out to him on Twitter. Listen to his podcast there. Alex, you got anything else before I wrap this thing up?
No, go Bucks, and we'll see if we'll watch a win tonight. That'd be fun for a change.
There you go. Maybe they get that kid called up. But in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, please donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the PayPal button, or you can use also get an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. Happy Friday. Happy weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. Happy Father's Day, I think, this weekend as well, too. Right? Happy Father's Day to the fathers out there as well, too. So until Tuesday, unless we need to do another emergency podcast, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.